Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to warmly welcome all of you today for gathering with us for this 35th annual Padmapani lecture by Professor Sudhamahi Ragunathan ji. And I would also like to thank Professor Sudhamahi ji for showing up today and giving us this wonderful opportunity to present this lecture on writing with a master, Memoirs of Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof. Thank you very much. And with this, I would like to begin today's lecture. As I mentioned, it is on the writing with a master, Memoirs of Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof. And before that, I would like to give you a short synopsis about today's lecture, which is on Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof. So, any life has many dimensions, and by definition, a memoir dwells only on some of them. The life of a Lama who was displaced from his monastery and his country, but who still lived a full life, traveling widely and influencing people whom he met and living by his beliefs, is a short story that can hardly be contained in one single book or in one words. For that matter, therefore, it is that writing for the monk was captivating and challenging, educative and edifying. Recognized as a Tulku when he was still under 2 years of age, it is a completely different kind of life that he led in his monastery at Doboom Ritro, when in 1959 he had to leave for India without knowing the route or the destination when he left. He came to live in a shed as a refugee, where he got ration to meet his daily needs. What was the transition like, and what unfolded thereafter before he came to Tibet House? In his memoirs, Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof wanted to leave a record of his life and tell his reader that he was an ordinary man who had the good fortune to get some extraordinary teachings. Now, with this synopsis, I would like to begin this lecture. And first of all, I would like to call upon our chairperson of today's lecture, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdullah, and the director of Tibet House, the cultural center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I would also like to request Professor Sudhamahi Ragunathan ji to kindly come up on stage and do the honor of lighting the lamp and presenting the souvenir. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Sudhamahi ji. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdullah, Professor Sudhamahi ji, Madam Chunkila, and Venerable Professor Kaveri Gilji. Now, I would like to request our chairperson of today's lecture, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdullah, to kindly offer the white scarf as a token of our heartfelt gratitude and the souvenir to Professor Sudhamahi Ragunathan ji. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Professor Sudhamahi ji. Thank you very much, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdullah. Now, I would like to call upon our secretary, Mr. Tenzin Kunjabla, to give the welcome address. Thank you.
A very good evening, everyone. Respected Professor Dr. Sudhamahi ji, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdullah, friends of Tibet House, and everyone who are gathered here today. It is with great joy and reverence that I welcome you all to the 35th Padmapani lecture. This lecture series, initiated by His Eminence late Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof in 1989 at IIC, stands as a testament to his profound commitment to sharing the teachings of compassion and wisdom that lie at the heart of Buddhist philosophy. Padmapani is the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, the embodiment of universal compassion. Hence, the title invokes an idea of universal understanding and harmony. Over the years, the Padmapani lecture have provided a platform for meaningful discussion on spiritual and cultural matters, reflecting Rinpoche's vision of fostering dialogue across traditions. Today's lecture, titled Riding with the Master, the Memoirs of Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof, will explore the life and legacy of Rinpoche, who dedicated himself to the promotion of interfaith harmony, the arts, and the vision of His Holiness the Dalai Lama for a united and compassionate world. We are honored to have Professor Sudhamahi Ragunathan ji as our guest speaker today, who is a distinguished scholar, former Vice Chancellor of Jain Vishwa Bharati University, and a prolific author and translator. One of her works is The Song of the Spirit, which is the publication of Tibet House, New Delhi. We also have Professor Maya Joshi in the audience from Lady Shri Ram College, who has also worked on the publication of Tibet House, Pramana from Sambuddha series. Professor Sudhamahi's insights will no doubt enrich our understanding of Lama Doboom Tulku's life and contributions. His legacy continues to inspire us all in reminding us of the power of compassion, art, and dialogue in creating a more harmonious world. We eagerly look forward to Professor Raghunathan's reflections, and I thank you all for joining us in this celebration of Lama Doboom Tulku's life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tenzin Gunjapla. In this lecture, I would like to give you a brief introduction about Tibet House and its various programs and activities. So, I would like to briefly introduce to you all about the Tibet House and its activities. Tibet House, New Delhi was established in 1965 by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet for the purpose of preserving the cultural heritage at the time when it faced forceful challenges in Tibet, as well as for providing a center for Tibetan culture, putting emphasis on developing a sense of compassion as its own effective antidote to global suffering, together with the needs for a meaningful exchange between different religious and cultural traditions, also had a profound effect on the purpose and its activities of Tibet House. Tibet House aims to bring together Buddhist masters and Tibetologists, people across different disciplines, students and practitioners, and the common man through its various programs and events. Tibet House continues to expand its objective in saving Tibet's heritage and in exploring and working towards Tibet House's potential contribution to the ethical development of the modern society. Over a period of 5 decades since its inception, Tibet House has come to recognize as a significant institution for the dissemination of Tibetan culture and for Nalanda Buddhist studies. Tibet House is a 5-story facility which has a museum of valuable Tibetan art and artifacts, as well as a library with nearly 5,000 volumes of manuscripts and books, a resource center, a conference hall, a gallery, and a bookshop. Tibet House offers various study programs on Nalanda Buddhist philosophy, conferences on interdisciplinary subjects such as neuroscience and Buddhist psychology, quantum physics, spiritual ecology, and universal ethics. A publication unit which publishes several books a year, and a program division which regularly organizes lectures, seminars, conferences, film screenings, and exhibitions. Tibet House has also offers 4 different courses on Buddhist philosophy and psychology, and a Tibetan language course. Firstly, the first batch of Nalanda Masters course, which was launched on 9 December 2016 on the occasion of 51st anniversary of Tibet House, New Delhi, in the gracious presence of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, along with Sri Kiran Rijiju, the Union State Minister of Home Affairs, and Sri Najib Jung, Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. The first batch of Nalanda Masters course, Batch 1, is completed with 372 students from 44 different countries, second batch of Nalanda Master's course on Nalanda Buddhist philosophy has already started, and then we have successfully completed with 4 batches, and in fact, we are absolutely delighted to announce the recent launch of the 5th batch of Nalanda Diploma course, and the registration will begin from 2nd September. Thirdly, Tibet House is pleased to announce the successful completion of 2nd batch of Nalanda certificate course, which had commenced on 7 January 2024 with a total registration of 1,689 participants from 62 different countries. Tibet House offers a Tibetan language course on a regular basis. There are 4 levels of learning offered at a very nominal fee with scholarship for students and monastics. Till date, 26 batches have been successfully completed, and we are about to complete the 27th batch of the Tibetan language course this month, with a total registration of 161 participants and 70 enrolled for the course. Tibet House also offers Nalanda Dharma studies on a twice a week for Tibetans and non-Tibetans alike who are native speakers or have learned the Tibetan language at the request of this cohort residing in both India as well as abroad. The weekly public online classes by Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdullah, Director of Tibet House, the Culture Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and will continue to introduce them to the basic framework of Buddhist philosophy in a systematic way. The topics that are covered guided the students in a stepwise manner towards a greater understanding of Buddhism and provided a basis for further studies in Nalanda philosophy. Now, I would like to request our director, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdullah, to kindly give the welcome address to the participants here. And before that, I would like to give a brief introduction about him. Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdullah is currently the director of Tibet House, the cultural center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. While being assigned with the responsibility of the directorship of Tibet House, he also gives regular lectures and leads philosophy classes in Tibet House and other places as well. He travels widely within India and abroad to teach Buddhist philosophy, psychology, logic, and practice. He has also worked on several books. As assigned by the Office of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, he visited the United States of America in 2008 to work with Professor Paul Ekman on His Holiness the Dalai Lama's book, Ethics for a New Millennium, Part 2, and the book series Art of Happiness, which were jointly written by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, such as The Graded Path. He has written a number of papers for national and international conferences on topics such as the paradox of the brain and mind, and ultimate reality according to Aya Nagarjuna. He is currently in the process of writing 2 important books, one entitled Journey into the Paradox of Brain and Mind, and the other, What Constitutes the Ultimate Reality? The Effects of Understanding the Ultimate Reality. Well, with this, I would like to request our Director, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdullah, to kindly give the welcome address to our participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gongchindala. Thank you so much. And I don't want to take much of my time here because that we came here to listen to Professor Sudhamahi Ragunathan about the biography of Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof. And for information, there are few points to be kept in mind. Number one is that why Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof is very important for Tibet House. And number two, in this connection, you constantly hear this word Tulku. What is meant by Tulku? I don't want to go into detail with that, but at Tibet House, we see that with the grace of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the extreme generosity and the vision of the Indian government, Tibet House was established in 1964. And so with this, there were a series of directors, and finally before me, it was Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof. And I personally, given that today is to listen to his biography, so I don't want to go into detail of his biography, but my personal experience with Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof Rinpoche is that amazingly great sacrifice of his life, the core, the essence of his life, the peak of his life, the prime of his life, all dedicated to Tibet House. And that too, like the people, but the Tibetan people and people along the Himalayan belt, we see that among the dedication, seeing His Holiness as the final embodiment of compassion and of the benefactor, your lifelong till enlightenment, the guide. Because of this, that all of us, we are committed to dedicate whatever for His Holiness is to accomplish, to fulfill the wishes of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and who in turn think only of the world, the betterment of the world, and the betterment of the humanity, the peace, and the happiness for the humanity. So, with this in mind, the Tulku, in simple terms, or in Hindi, it can be like avatar, or in English, it's reincarnation or emanation. So this concept, many of you may be already aware of that, and it has a connotation of each one of us having the potential to eventually become somebody like as the sun, to illuminate yourself and to illuminate all others, to get rid of all the miseries, the darkness of ignorance, by the spread of the light of the wisdom within yourself and within others. In other words, everyone has a seed of perfection. And that seed of perfection, whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you are a believer or not, whether you're a male or female, it doesn't matter. Everyone has this potential. And anybody who identifies that and then works to nurture this, so these people will see that forever the potential inside keeps growing. And at one point, you reach to a point whereby you are recognized as somebody who will never turn back, who will keep going from the state of darkness, from the darkness to the light, from light to the greater light, never turning back. So this is the concept of Tulku, and each one of us, if we identify this potential within us and then put effort to nurture this, at one point, each one of us as well will become Tulku, or the reincarnate one. So having said this, we are very fortunate. And in fact, I'm very privileged that I was sitting next to Professor Sudhamahi on the chair down there, and then asking her some questions, personal questions about how she came to know about Rinpoche, the Doboom Tulku-Prof Rinpoche, for how many years. Because I read the biography completely, fully, and I was so impressed. And I was deeply grateful to Professor Sudhamahi for the reason that had it not been for this biography, I would not know many of the facts which Rinpoche, through Professor Sudhamahi, things were being flashed out so clearly and extremely intimately and very clearly, which otherwise I did not have any clue. And I was so fortunate. Reading this book, I thought that Tibet House, for Tibet House Delhi, this is going to be a treasure, this book. And I deeply felt it, and how it was written. It was, yes, we can see that there's a communication happening between Professor Sudhamahi and the Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof. I can see the dialogue happening there, and there's so much warmth there. There's so much warmth. There's amazing quality, which is so profoundly exhibited in this book. So we're very fortunate that the that we have the author who co-authored this biography with Lama Doboom Rinpoche, who passed away unfortunately, is a big, big loss for the Tibetan community, for the Buddhist community, and for the whole world. For the simple reason that the message of the Buddha, the message of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, is for the well-being of the world. And anybody who is working in favor of that, in line with this, the loss of that person is such a big loss for the world. And indeed, it was a big loss for all of us. And when I first heard the loss of Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof, I couldn't just couldn't contain the pain, for the reason that today, how many such people are there who are so fully dedicated, committed his life for the well-being of the humanity, for the well-being of the dharma, the goodness of the world. So the so rare, and the simplicity of Rinpoche, the creativity of Rinpoche, and his sacrifice, as I said earlier, the prime of his life, he dedicated for the well-being of Tibet House, for the working of Tibet House, and he really uplifted the state of Tibet House from nowhere to somewhere. That's amazing, incredible journey, and we are very fortunate to have Professor Sudhamahi ji here, and who in turn, last time when we were doing the tribute to Venerable Doboom Rinpoche, I came to learn about Professor Sudhamahi ji at that point, and then I was so curious. And then I came to know that she was writing the biography, on the verge to complete the biography, and I was so keen to meet her. And then that this biography should come out, and it came out just at the right time. So we're very fortunate. It's all available outside there, and the author here, who co-authored with Rinpoche himself, we're having her here, and then yes, I just told people, our Tibetan staff who are very young, that today's lecturer, Professor Sudhamahi Ragunathan, and I said, add the label former Vice Chancellor of such and such, because people may not read the whole biography of the speaker. Just seeing this would be good enough to see that this is a very academic presentation. It's not just like a storytelling. So with this in mind, I involve all the audience here would like to request Professor Sudhamahi ji to begin your lecture. And we're all keen to learn, because you are the one who had the first-hand experience with Rinpoche as to his thinking, his thought processes, and so forth. So, stage is yours.
Ashidele. Namaskar. I begin by expressing my gratitude to Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdullah Rinpoche for having given me this honor of speaking today under the Padmapani lecture series. I'm deeply grateful and honored. I also thank all the other members of Tibet House who have helped make this evening possible. My salutations to Padmapani, the Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva of infinite mercy. My salutations to Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof Rinpoche's memory. He should have been here, and I should have been sitting beside him as the default speaker. I thank all of you for taking time off this evening and coming here. I know your presence here is a testament to the popularity Lama Doboom Tulku Rinpoche enjoyed, and how all of you know him at different levels and so offer this tribute to him. It is quite intimidating to talk to people who know Rinpoche as long as I have known, or even longer. So you can understand how my heart is going, boom-pity-boom. But at the same time, it is also exciting, because when I talk of him, sailing around in his maroon robes in IIC, or his love for cheese straws, or his pioneering and innovative projects that he undertook with the collaboration of IIC sometimes and sometimes outside, even the Padmapani lecture series, I know all of you will have some memories, some thoughts rising up in your minds too. And I think that is very exciting, because together we will be able to celebrate, as he said, celebrate the life of a monk for whom the present, every moment brought possibilities of learning and laughter. He was not the one to say, I wish yesterday had been like this, or I hope tomorrow will be like that. Today was enough to fill his life and make it fulfilling. That is what the book is about. It is about the sparkle of compassion that he added to ordinary things around him. He was here in IIC, convalescing when he was not too well in one of the rooms, and he looked out of the window and he saw a little bird fallen out of a nest. Rinpoche gathered himself, went out, picked up the little bird and brought it inside so that he could look after it. He was afraid some cat may just nab that little bird. 2 days they looked after the bird, but he found that the bird was not responding. Then the third day he went and put the bird back as safely as possible. That afternoon he heard the call of a mother bird, so he thought perhaps the mother bird was telling him, thanks for looking after my fledgling. Well, that's his interpretation. He does not like to think that the cat got the bird. Once when he was going to Hyderabad, and he was sitting in his room, and he saw a dog had many puppies, and all of them were healthy and happy except one. Every time that little one went to feed, the other puppies would push that little one away. So Rinpoche said, I have to adopt that one. I have to look after that one. So that was how his compassion was evident in things around which we probably see and overlook and go on. And there is a belief, Rinpoche, that if the last moments of the animal's life, if a Rinpoche or a holy person addresses the animal gets a better life, a better birth next life. So this Rinpoche did all the time, whether he was in his defense colony home or his Gurgaon house or wherever he was alive to the nature around him. It is about the sparkle of learning that he added to every moment, every new experience that came his life. He was visiting New York, and who would he meet but Marina Abramovich? She told him she was having an exhibition at that time in MoMA. And the exhibition was that she sat on a chair and opposite her sat another person, whoever came, the visitor. And she looked into the eyes of the other person. She was still, and the people who sat in the chair opposite felt it was a life-changing experience. Some cried, some were in a turmoil and all that. Our Rinpoche also went and sat. He also said, let me experience. And he was the second last participant that day. He sat there and I asked him, Rinpoche, how was it? He said, I tried not to look into her eyes, otherwise I'd have started laughing. And that was what he was. So on the 15th of October 2021, I found a WhatsApp message from him saying, Sakya Pandit, 11th century Buddhist scholar, has said that you must keep learning even if you have just one day more to live. So I'm at 80, I'm still learning and still dreaming. In that spirit, one day he called me and he says, Sudhamahi, what do you think of quantum physics and quantum mind? What do you know about it? What could I answer? I said, I'll learn Rinpoche and get back to you. I don't know. So that was his... so writing with him was full of experiences like this, fun and laughter. One day, we were writing a chapter on when His Holiness the Dalai Lama was visiting their the monasteries, and we were describing it. So Rinpoche seriously told me, you know what I want to say, that the roads, why don't you say the roads were swiped? I said, Rinpoche, you swipe your credit card or you swipe something off, but you can't swipe the roads. And Rinpoche laughed. Every time we met, he says, Sudhamahi, don't swipe. So that was our joke, and that was so. But behind all this jovial and happy, cheerful demeanor was a very serious and a pious person. His routine, I believe, was that he used to get up in the morning and have a few hours of prayer before he got on with the day. And one of the most impactful sentences that he ever spoke to me was when I asked him, Rinpoche, how do you pray? When you're in trouble, or when you're unhappy, or when you were moving country, did you pray? He didn't understand. I repeated the question several times to him. Finally, he said, a little doubtful still, he said, you know, you don't pray for yourself, you only pray for others. And as Rinpoche said, he was a Tulku, so he thought only of others. In fact, there was a story which he told me, which I couldn't, which he told me not to include in the book, because he said it was just coincidence. In Tashidarga, in Doboom Ritro, where he lived, there was a cat, and somebody stepped on the cat. The cat started bleeding and throwing up, and it was badly injured. Somebody else brought a bowl of water, and it was traditionally the Rinpoches could sprinkle water on an ill or a, unwell person and blow on it, and that it was believed that that will revive that person. Rinpoche said, I did it, and the cat revived. But that was coincidence. Don't write this. It was just coincidence. So that is, before I go on to tell you more about the book and actual writing of it, I'd like to show you some pictures. Most of the pictures have subtitles, but one of them, among the last few, does not have. That is about when Rinpoche went to, was walking in the cyber hub in Gurgaon. Just a minute, I'll just finish this. He was walking along the cyber hub in Gurgaon, and he saw a pan shop, pan. And he saw two youngsters working in the pan shop. They were wearing, their uniform was a maroon pant, trousers, and maroon coat, and a maroon cap. Rinpoche said, that cap looks lovely. So the second day he went there, he said, I want that cap. Now those fellows said, our owner gave it to us, it's a uniform. So they called up their owner. The owner was a good man. He said, tomorrow I'll give you that cap at the same time. True to his word, he gave the cap. And when I met Rinpoche in New York, he was wearing that cap, and he said, how do you like my cap? I got it from a panwala. That is the spirit which he had for the pictures.
tare dore soha. Om tare tu 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 tare.
Om Tare Tut Tare Ture Swaha. That was a prayer that was in Rinpoche's mind from his very young years. 82 years ago, on the 16th of February, it was Tibetan New Year. And in the Gashu region of Tibet, a vast green plain with undulated winds blowing and hardly any people. There were few huts, few tents pitched with yakhe, black tents. These nomads lit the butter lamp as is customary for New Year. The breeze that was blowing naturally extinguished the lamps sooner or later. But outside one tent, the lamp kept burning all night. Till the next day morning, a little baby boy was born. The parents were Tashi Paljor and Loyak. To the west of this, about a year and a half later, in a place called Tashi Darge, Doboom Ritro, some people went to a monk and asked him to identify the reincarnation of Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof. So 1.5 years later, this black tent heard, where the lamp had been burning all night, heard the sound of horsemen coming and stopping outside their tent. When they looked out, they found these were the people who had come from the Doboom Ritro. They were a little taken aback, and they said, "We have a story to tell you. We have." There was Kalsang Tempa was the first. Geshe Kalsang Tempa was the first Doboom. He was from our region. He reincarnated, and we had a second Doboom. And now we have been told that your son is the third Doboom. We want to take him with us. The parents were taken aback and overwhelmed. Very rarely in a nomadic family are reincarnations born. Also, they belong to the Kagyupa sect, and these were from the Gelugpas. And also, they had traveled for 10 days to come and reach the tent. It was very rare that people traveled for 10 days to come and to seek the reincarnation. the little boy was taken. He was under 2 years old. The only measure of his age is that he couldn't walk. He was still not walking. Rinpoche says with a laugh that in those days, it was very cold there and the children were always swaddled. So maybe that's why I didn't walk. But I was not older than 2. As they were bringing him back to Doboom Ritro, which was the hermitage that the second Doboom had built, they saw strange cloud formations in the sky, which again they felt was an auspicious omen. When the little child came to Doboom Ritro, it was a 3-storied building, and the top floor was for visiting monks, and the second floor was Lama Doboom Tulku's room and a chapel and some other accommodation, and so on. But when he started walking and running around, they built another little place for him so that he doesn't fall off the second floor. So they built it on the ground floor. Here he spent 12 years of his life. And I feel the personality that we have met was formed and shaped at that time. Lama Doboom Tulku Rinpoche has told me that generally the teachers are not very pleasant. They're very strict. And they could be, at best, they may not hit. But Lama Doboom Tulku's teacher was a nice man. Of course, he still says that he was happier when he was out of the room than when he was in the room. But he was a disciplinarian, but nobody scolded him. He had a labrang. A labrang is an establishment of a tulku. And as Rinpoche just said, a tulku in the Buddhist context, they identified 3 bodies, 3 trikaya, the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. The Nirmanakaya in Sanskrit is tulku, the one who is born for the service of others. So he had it was a medium-sized labrang. There were many people serving him. One was a gentleman called Gaga. Gaga had served his predecessor, and so when he saw the reincarnation, he was full of love, and he took care of the reincarnation so carefully and so lovingly. I feel all this contributed to making Lama Doboom Tulku a very friendly person, non-judgmental and happy. Even in his studies and his prayer was taught to him as you would teach understanding a child's limitation, but taught regularly. Doboom Ritro was in a very remote place. There was nothing else to do there. If a lamp was lit, it was lit more also for worship, but also because that was the only way of getting light in that place. So by sunset, they all had to wind down. There was nothing else to do. So there was a lot of time to observe, reflect, and think. And Rinpoche was alive to the few animals that were around in that place. There were not too many wild animals. But he observed them. There was an animal chart in his room. All this made him feel a certain empathy for animals. That has, as we've seen, lived with him right through. In one of the halls in Doboom Ritro, there was a Jataka tale. That was about a man goes to a river and he suddenly starts drowning. He calls for help, and a golden deer comes rushing and helps him. The man is very grateful. He bows down to the golden deer and he says, "How can I ever repay this?" The deer says, "You don't have to do anything. Just remember one thing. Don't tell anybody about me." So the man says, "Of course I won't, of course." But that very time, the queen has dreamt of a golden deer, and she tells her husband, "Look, if I have dreamt of a deer, that means it exists. You have to find it at all costs." And the king sends out messages and announces, and everybody, there'll be a huge reward to the one who finds the golden deer and tells him about it. This man forgets his promise. Greed rears its head, and he goes and says, I can show you where the golden deer is. He takes the king's soldiers to the river, and he points to the golden deer. As he points, his arms fall off. So Rinpoche says, that's why I learnt my lesson of integrity, of how important it is not to betray. And till today, that lesson stayed with him. Early morning, he used to get up to pray. Early morning, there was a prayer. Evening, there was a prayer. All his games were about prayers. So prayer was something that was very intrinsic to his life. That doesn't mean he didn't have fun. He had four other monks studying with him, and he had 3 children who were being supported by the Labrang, being brought up by his hermitage. So they were also there to play with him. He did have some fun, but a lot of prayer was a part of his life, and I think that also stayed with him. At the age of about 12, he was going to Lhasa for further studies, to the Drepung monastery, from where Rinpoche also has done his studies. And on his way, they passed through Gashu. And there the same black tents were once again pitched. Rinpoche was going, riding a horse called Dragyal, whom he loved very much. And while he was riding, it suddenly struck all of them that Rinpoche could not recognize his mother. So who would help him recognize his mother? He had seen his father a couple of times because the father visited Doboom Ritro. So that was, I think, a very interesting and significant part of his life story, that, he didn't recognize his mother. And that was the only time he met her. Then his father pointed out the mother. That was the only time he met his mother. And afterwards he went to Lhasa. From Lhasa, he came to India, so he never had a chance to go back. In Lhasa, he was awarded the Doboom Tulku title, and he had many nice experiences. Among the best was the teachings of His Holiness that he attended. He says in 1954, he went to the Kala Chakra teaching that was given, the first ever, by His Holiness. He says he was very young, but still he remembers how beautifully it was explained and how simply it was explained, so that it could be understood by everybody and applied to. He said it was explained in layers, and the bottommost layer was the sky. Above the sky was the wind. Then came fire, then came water, then came earth, and on top of that was the human being. So if any of the levels were tampered with or got slightly disturbed, the whole system would get disturbed. So I feel that was one idea that got embedded in Rinpoche's mind, that when he came to Delhi and in Tibet House, he had the ecological conference, the environment. He was among the pioneers who to build awareness of the environment, not only amongst the elite and the Delhi people, but he translated this to all the Tibetan schools and children. So that was one teaching. The other day, then His Holiness took his Larampa examination. That Rinpoche says was an experience. I didn't know that was going to be such a beautiful experience, and the last experience. A few days after that was Monlam. And Rinpoche was a Tulku, so it was high standing. He was quite close to His Holiness. And from His Holiness, where His Holiness was giving the teaching, from there directly opposite was a tall building. On top of the tall building were Chinese soldiers sitting behind gunny bags, aiming their rifle at His Holiness. But His Holiness was giving a lecture as though he didn't even know they were there. So tension was building in Tibet. First, it was the phone lines that were established. Everybody saw that, oh, the phone lines, that was new to them. After the phone lines came trucks from China. After the trucks came posters. And then there was the presence of soldiers everywhere. So at one level, there was high tension building up. At another level, Rinpoche was going to study. And like all of us, when he studies, some of the teachers are not very engaging. So once at one such class, he took with him a poti. In those days there were manuscripts of stories of Uncle Tompa. Uncle Tompa was a legendary figure of Tibet. And Rinpoche enjoyed reading his stories. When sitting in class, he found that Rinpoche next to him was also reading some story. So they both were reading, they were not concentrating on the class, but reading something else. And so were very engaged. But Uncle Tompa was funny. So Rinpoche had to laugh. And when he had to laugh, he had to pretend he was coughing. And so one of the stories was that Uncle Tompa was very careful in avoiding small stones. But when it came to big stones, he didn't seem to care. He jumped over them. He stepped over them. So somebody asked him, why are you so careful with the small stones, but with the big stones you're so careless? So Uncle Tompa said, but I thought that was what we should do. All the monks are very careful about the small rules and forget the big rules. So that was one way of telling them what to setting the priorities right. Another tale, which was more folkish, was that Uncle Tompa went to somebody and asked for some may. May is barley. And he borrowed the barley. After some time, it was time to return it. So he went and said, can I return it in dhru? So that dhru also means wheat. So they said, okay. But instead of giving them any package, he just went and started dancing for a while and then went away, because dhru is also a dance. So Rinpoche was enjoying this, and Drukpa Kunle is another writer who was a scholar. Uncle Tompa was a legendary figure. Drukpa Kunle was and he, for instance, said following dharma should be like a starving man eating food. His one mouthful is in his mouth, one in his hand, and his eyes are on the third one, which is on the plate. That is how one should follow dharma. So all these were going on side by side, but at the same time, tension was building at the other side. One day they found, but there was still hope. There was a rebel group called the Chusi Gangtruk, which was supporting, which they had great hope, and they thought they would keep the Chinese away. One day they found that they were marching out of Nobelinka, and marching out very forcefully, very aggressively. The monks felt very happy. They said, now I think Tibet is not in danger. But they turned southwards to cross River Kichu. Crossing River Kichu is a metaphor for fleeing Tibet, because it is south of Tibet, and that's how you escape. That completely demoralized the people. One evening, after Rinpoche had attended his prayer session, he came back to his room, and there he found his companions had packed up everything, and they told him, we have to leave right away. His heaviest robe was laid out, and they told him, if you want something, take it, but wear your heaviest robe, because none of us can carry it. So he wore his heaviest robe. He found one learning Hindi. Somehow something told him to pick that up. And he picked up his prayer book and he left. He climbed a mountain, which was not an easy job, and then he went down the mountain, and he was very tired. When he reached the bottom of the hill, his followers said, we have to hurry because we have to cross an iron bridge before we go to River Kichu. And the news is that the Chinese are blocking the bridge tomorrow, so we have to go right away. Rinpoche says he was very tired. And so he told him, no, we'll go tomorrow morning. His caretaker Gaga cried and he said, please, let's go now. Otherwise, we'll never be able to escape. We've come so far. What will happen? But Rinpoche said, no, tomorrow morning. He says, I was tired. But in the morning when I went there was nobody there. And these people thought, oh, he's a Rinpoche, he's a Tulku, he knows. But actually, Rinpoche says, I was just tired. And they crossed, morning there was nobody, and they crossed. For 1 month they traveled, with rests in between. And it was not easy. They climbed snow-clad mountains. And he says the one good thing was that because he was wearing the Tulku robe, people still offered him food wherever they went, whichever village they went. So they did not starve for food. Finally, they came to one of the famous stories is that one of his guides said, I'll take you to India, I know how to go. We have to cross a boulder and then we have to turn right or left. But the boulder was fully submerged in snow. So where to locate the boulder? But they went on. What carried them on was that His Holiness, they were told that His Holiness had passed that way 2 days ago. That was what kept them going. As Rinpoche said, many people ask me, what did Lama Doboom Tulku say about how he felt when he was fleeing Tibet? None of them were concerned about themselves. Their main worry was for His Holiness. If he was safe, they were happy. And with the way he went, they wanted to go. So that is how they followed. Rinpoche said something very beautiful when he came to Misimari, India. He saw the Tiranga, and he said that I was very happy to see that. It was not new for me. I had seen it in newsletter that used to come from Gangtok. But when I saw the flag, when I saw the sky, I said, I'm free now. That kind of freedom was something wonderful. Remember, he is talking about a situation when he was a prince, a king in Doboom Ritro, with attendants, and he was still traveling with 10 attendants. And when he came, he lived in a shed with half a lifebuoy soap and ration which was dropped from a helicopter. Very often the ration packets burst when they fell. And it was hot. He had hot, heavy robes on, but he didn't tell me that. What he told me was that he was happy that there was freedom. And he said something very beautiful. He said the seeds had begun to sprout. When I left Lhasa, they had not yet sprouted. There was a continuity. There they had just sowed it, here it had sprouted. The days in Misimari were very, very, days when they didn't know what they were going to do, a little confusing. They were all sure that maybe in 2 months or 3 months or maybe 1 year or maybe 1.5 years, they will go back to Tibet. So they were told that, look, all the monasteries will be erased there. You have to go and pick it up. So even the littlest of the monks felt that he was going to be an abbot one day, and that's what they were told, that you too may have to become an abbot. So you have to prepare yourself to go and revive the monasteries. In this way, a few years went past, but they realized that this could not be the way to live. They had to come to some arrangement. A group of them went to Punjab to lay the roads near Dharamshala. A group of them went to Karnataka to become farmers. Rinpoche went to Baksadwar to undertake monastic studies. There he studied and he taught for a while, after which he went to the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies in Varanasi. There he did his Acharya degree. In those days, Larampa was the highest degree, but that had been abolished for a while. So they awarded him the Acharya degree, but later on in 1972, he was awarded the Larampa, which was brought back into... and when he went there, afterwards what? There was again a blank, there was again confusion. But then he came to Tibet House as a librarian. There he did something interesting. There was a Encyclopedia Tibetica being brought out. He wrote the introduction to about 38 volumes, if I'm not mistaken. that was his contribution to the library in Tibet House. Thereafter, from there, he went to the library in Dharamshala. And there he brought about a new system of cataloging the manuscripts. All the manuscripts were there under the name of the collection, but not subject-wise. So he revolutionized the way they were cataloged, and I believe even today that is being followed. From the LTWA, he went to Quig, that is His Holiness's office. There also he had very interesting experiences, and one of the contributions there was, whenever a child was born, the couple would come to His Holiness and ask for a name for the child. And the tradition was that some names would be written on scraps of paper and folded and kept with His Holiness, and His Holiness would pick up one paper and give it to the parents. Lama Doboom Tulku made nice printed, nice cards in which the name was written. So the parents valued that contribution because they could keep it lifelong, the name given by His Holiness for their child. From there, he came to Tibet House, and we know we have all met him at different times in Tibet House. He introduced many new programs, many creative programs. He had lecture series, and as I said, pioneering work in interfaith meetings, pioneering work in environmental awareness. And his Sacred Music Festival was something amazing, which was international, worldwide, and 141 Tibetan monks and nuns participated. In addition to people from different faiths, different religious denominations came, and they all participated. It was a huge affair. But when all that happened, what is it that was he even had dance and music programs to Tibetan themes and ideas. There was a Buddha statue that he installed in the Buddha Jayanti Park. And, but all this, what was the underlying richness to all was his appreciation of Tibetan literature. He was not one to read only the religious literature. He had read a lot, as a result of which his understanding of life and of arts was at a very nuanced level. So he went, one of the, Tsongkhapa, the founder, the architect of Gelugpa tradition, was his favorite. And he himself, a poet, wrote some poems. I feel all this appreciation of Tibetan literature was the one that enriched the programs that he visualized or he launched. The poems he wrote were in the style of a writer called Guntang. I read two maxims of his. In the middle of the fearful ocean, if fierce waves dismantle the ship, one still holds hope of getting to the shore, grabbing a piece of wood wreckage. Here, wood wreckage is the teaching that grabbing a piece of teaching one can. Even a fragment of the teaching of a true spiritual guru, if followed diligently with endurance, will lead one to the spot of everlasting happiness. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I've taken a lot of your time and tried to give you a glimpse of Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof Rinpoche, but I have to tell you one story now. There was a writer who called himself Abu Ralpo, Paltrul Rinpoche. He wrote a poem called The Golden Bee and the Turquoise Bee. They were good friends, the golden bee and the turquoise bee. They went to the garden every day and they sucked nectar and came back. They had promised to each other that they would never transgress the dharma. They would always abide by dharma. One day it so happened that when the both of them were in the garden, a cloud passed over the flower on which the turquoise bee was sitting. The flower thought it was sunset, and the flower closed. The golden bee was hunting for the turquoise bee and called out everywhere, finally found the voice coming from inside a flower. So the golden bee tried to get help in every possible way, but it started pouring and the flower closed even tighter. There was no way that the turquoise bee could escape. And then the Rinpoche sings of impermanence, of how our attachment, our delusion, and we get lost in that while everything is actually impermanent. Rinpoche did not preach. He did not want to be a dharam guru. He did not want to teach. But he left me with these stories. The stories of the turquoise bee and the golden bee, the stories of Uncle Tulpa, and so on. So that I understand for myself, how is it that he was able to find joy and laughter in every moment, not regret. In the 7 years that I worked with him, not one day did he say, I was so unfortunate that I had to move away from my country. Not once. Not once did he say, I'm hoping that this is what will happen or the future should be like this. Never. It was always this moment. And that is why the work was so exciting. Holding with him his small Buddha statue and his rosary, which was always close to him. I want to finish with a verse that he always recited mentally when he saw the Buddha statue or the Buddha Tanka, whatever. It is written by Tsongkhapa. It says, it is by the grace of the Guru that I came across the teachings of the all-surpassing teacher, the Buddha. May all the beings be guided by the sublime Guru. To that, I dedicate this merit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Sudhamahi. And it's a very enriching day for us to hear something directly from one of the authors of this book, the biography. And before I come up with my own, the concluding remarks, any questions from the floor? Please feel free to, because it's a great chance for us that the author is with us about the life story of the Rinpoche and can link to that any information. The biography means, whereas Professor Sudhamahi said, that the Rinpoche is multi-skilled, multi-talented, and multi-exposed to the different literary works. So you can come with any thoughts, and particularly say his thoughts. So what he would think about in this area, that area, and so forth. So we have here somebody who spent so much time with Rinpoche. Any questions? Please feel free to raise your hand.
Is the biography complete, or you need one more or two more to write it?
I wish. Our deal was that this book I help Rinpoche, next book he helps me. This is his memoir. But because when you write about yourself, you can't write about all that you have done. You generally write about what you think and what you feel and what you experience. It is only when a biographer can write that of his achievements. So many of the things could not be put into the book because it was a memoir. So I was hoping that we would come up with a sequel, but now I think I'll have to wait for Rinpoche's reincarnation. He's promised us he'll come back soon. So maybe then.
Thank you very much for your very interesting lecture. I also knew Doboom Rinpoche for a very long time. I had a feeling that Rinpoche was a bit lonely Did he ever discuss about his loneliness with you?
I don't think so. I have always had the feeling that he was a very deep man. I mean, he had more thoughts inside him than. But otherwise, I think he was a very pensive man. But he was a happy man. I mean, I didn't think he was lonely. I think he had many ideas in his head that itself kept him company. He was very creative, very. So I didn't feel a sadness in his in any of the meetings that we had. I didn't see any sadness in his speech or talk.
In this connection, what Professor Sudhamahi said, and I remember it was that because I know Rinpoche, of course, not too closely as professor, but I see that Rinpoche is extremely creative, and he's vastly read. And in fact, I would say that yes, of course, in the course of meeting with people, he would meet with different people, and he would make sure that he learns something from others, or whoever you are, it doesn't matter. So he will continue to learn something, and he's really learned himself, greatly learned. So there's so many things going in his mind, which would keep him very preoccupied, and he would never be lonely. So just a little bit of sharing with you as a light mode. What happened was that during the COVID time, during the lockdown, which means a chance for loneliness, one of my friends, he called me up, and it was when the lockdown was little lifted, not fully lifted. And then he called me and said, Gisela, I'm going to come to meet you. And I said, are you sure it's lockdown? Are you sure? He said that my wife told me to go to meet Gisela. And I said, why? And he said that my wife, he's so concerned about Gisela. Gisela must be feeling so lonely. So you must go there, give him companion, give him company there. And I said, if this is the purpose you come to meet me, please don't come. I have so many things to do. I have no time to feel lonely. Whereas if you come with a purpose, for a reason to discuss with me or whatever, something that I can do for you, then you're most welcome. Otherwise, if you think I'm lonely, please express my gratitude to your wife. Thank her for at least being concerned about my well-being, but I have no time to be lonely. So this, in fact, I would say that Rinpoche, Lama Doboom Rinpoche, he's extremely creative, and he has so many beautiful ideas in his mind. For sure, he did not have time to be lonely. Okay, next question. Yes, over there. Okay, Professor Kavaliji, you first. Okay.
Just have a point. Did he, by any chance, leave any word before his death, or some kind of hint that he will be born in such and such place hereafter, and within what time, kind of thing?
I wish.
Did not.
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Ragunathan. How beautifully you speak, orator. I could listen to you the whole evening. I just wanted to ask that the process of working with Rinpoche for 7 years, so you recorded while he spoke. And in this context, because his life spanned so many geographies and times, when he was talking about the past in Tibet and all, did he ever raise, just how, because so much had changed, and imagine ending your life in Delhi or in India, and then he's seen so much history. So what was your sense of when he was recounting the past, and obviously his memory was also so clear about his early childhood and entire, your sense about that, like when he spoke, because you mentioned a lot that he really lived in the present, and that perhaps was a teaching of his life, experiences. So if you can share that a little bit with us, yeah.
First part of the question you asked me was
Just I wanted to, so you recorded like you
no. Sorry, yeah, I got it. No, I didn't record anything. I was taking notes all the time, and to understand anything, I had to ask him many questions. So, for example, the title of the book. Every day we used to discuss that Rinpoche, we need a title for the book, and he would say title, and we'd say, then we'd come up with something, and he'd laugh at what was the suggestion I gave, and he'd nod his head, and we'd go on to the next topic. One day we were talking of his horse, Dragyal. I asked him, how did you go to Lhasa? Because everything was new to me. So he said, I asked him, did you hire a horse or did you, he said, no, it was my horse, and I was very fond of him. And that horse was taken away from him in Lhasa because he was a student, and that was sold. So the next day morning, he came up with the title of Taken Away. So I think the 7 years were because I had many questions to ask. And for me, sitting with Rinpoche was a blessing in many ways, because he was very positive, very cheerful, and always had some incident to recount. And then if we worked for 6 hours, 1 hour would be spent laughing. I mean, we'd have some joke to crack, something like that. And I asked him, how do you feel that you are living, you left Tibet? He said, it's sad to lose your country. But he said, everything has worked out well. If I had been there, maybe I'd have been a nomad somewhere. Maybe I may still have been happy, but I would never have come so close to His Holiness. I would never have seen so many people in the world. I'd never have met such great minds. So there was, I have never sensed a sense of regret. Every statement he made was factual. Yes, it is sad that the country went. It is sad that, but even then there was something in it that was good. So.
Thank you so much. This was so illuminating, really. And particularly since you must have spent many hours talking to him to get this script together, I think you discovered a lot of things that we never had any idea about. He did tell me that he was taken away at the age of 2 and less, and I felt very sorry for him actually at that time. But I didn't know that he couldn't recognize his mother later, when they passed by that way. I just wanted to share that one of the things, because Geshe-la spoke of his, and you too spoke of his creativity, one of the things he did is get all these archaeologists who are in Delhi, in the Archaeological Survey and National Museum, the directors also, and he started, they were talking about their excavations, their particular little field where they were studying Buddhist history. And I realized later on that we never knew about these things. They don't often get reported in papers. And just as an example, he had the Director General of ASI coming and telling us about his own excavation in Kashmir of a stupa. And we only knew of Harwan, where the second Buddhist council was held by Kanishka. So he made us realize that our country is as much a Buddhist country as it is all these other things. So I wanted to know, I haven't read the book, I have it, but haven't had time. What did he feel? Did he share with you what he felt when, as a Tibetan who has studied the entire life of the Buddha, the teachings, when he actually went to Bodh Gaya and Sarnath, because he spent time in Sampurnanand University there and other places which were intimately related, well identified as places where the Buddha was.
Yeah, actually, that is a very good question, because that was the only time I felt very sorry for for the state of many things in our country, because Rinpoche said that when he came to India, he said he was coming to the land of the Buddha and the land of Gandhi. They came with a lot of hope, reverence, and prayer. And when they went to Bodh Gaya, he quotes an incident where somebody says, when I forget the name of the monk, who says that don't light the lamp too close to the tree, for it may harm the tree under which the Buddha sat and attained enlightenment. That much feeling they had. And they went and when they visited Bodh Gaya, it was a very emotional visit for them. And then when he went there several years later, he was very saddened to find everything had been concretized and so many buildings, and the spirit was not there, the spirit that he came seeking. In fact, there was he said there was also humor there, because he says when they talked of the Guru, and when they came to India, hordes of monks went to Amritsar, because there is Guru Nanak. They thought that must be Guru, that must be dedicated to the Buddha. So he said it took time to clarify. He said in Bodh Gaya, there is a temple dedicated to Mahavira. But again, they saw Buddha everywhere, For them, India was Buddha. So they thought everything was the Buddha. Then slowly, reality showed them that it was part of India, not all of India.
Sudhamahi, thank you so much. As you know, I've been reading your book. I'm almost through. I have to review it. So I'm reading it, reading at multiple levels. Yeah, I'm reading it. I'm reading it at multiple levels, because there is obviously a very long and deep association, as you're aware. First met Rinpoche when I was this high, according to the person who accompanied him. And you do include, because my father was a scholar and he visited us, and he stayed with us for a week actually in the United States later. Very interesting experiences. I don't think those can be included in my biography. But the house was a very fascinating 200-year-old house. My question is rather more conceptual, because when you refer to my father, the late Professor Joshi, you refer to him, meeting him, and saying that he is a scholar with a modern outlook. So I was struck by the use of the word modern, and then I thought of the fact that he had no regrets about the past. And I want to ask you what his approach to tradition and modernity would be, because when we worked with him through the years, we would organize talks, and so one gets to know. So Marina Abramovich on the one hand, whom I have also met through him, avant-garde artist, and then he really valued traditional pundits. Really valued, he would always seek out the authentic practitioners of a tradition. When we had these dialogues across traditions, he would make sure that it's someone from Varanasi who's grounded in the Sanskrit scriptures and so on. So very, very grounded in tradition and classics, and yet very open to experimentation. And his own persona, I always felt, was very modern. I mean, the picture in the US where he's wearing this down jacket, it was winters. Very adaptable. And my father would say that if Tibet was a free country, he would be like the ambassador, and he's very cosmopolitan in his attitude. So I just wanted to know from you your sense of how he perceives this dialectic of tradition and modernity, given that His Holiness also has a very interesting balanced perspective on this question.
Yeah, actually, it's a very fascinating question, because Rinpoche himself says that in poetry, I can take modern poetry, but I'm not able to appreciate modern art. So then he saw the difference, and he was able to see. I forgot to mention, when he went to met Marina Abramovich after the exhibition, she took him to his house, and he saw a huge room with a huge table in the center. And he looked at her, wondered what that was. And she said, all art begins in empty spaces. For Rinpoche, it resonated as emptiness gives birth to creation. That's how it. So he was receptive to modern ideas, but when it came to expression, even there, you see, he makes a difference between before the 11th century, there was the Kadampa period and the post-Kadampa period in Tibet. The literature was different. He says the literature then, pre-Kadampa, was more rustic. And by 12th, 13th, 14th century, it became very stylized and refined. So in Tsongkhapa's writing, he says there was poetry, there was beauty. So I think for him, modern and traditional, he appreciated the traditional, but not in toto. He appreciated modern, but he went more by the content. So I think there also he was very discerning. He was not anything modern or anything traditional. He could give up a lot of traditional, which he felt was not beautiful enough,
Right. Yeah. I know his views on thankas. He did not allow me to look at bad thankas.
He was very good at that. That's what I said. The book does not describe him at all. It's just the tip of the iceberg. But I told him, as a memoir, how much can he write? He can't say, I'm very good at looking at tankas. I have to do that for him. So he promised to help me in my next book. But I think I'll have to wait for him.
Thank you so much. Thank you for writing this. It's so important.
No, it was a blessing. I feel it was a blessing to me. I mean, I did not expect to get so fond of him, so close to him, as these 7 years have done. And it happened without my being aware of it.
My question is, while you were writing this book, I mean, what was the first thought or the first impression you had when you thought of writing this book? And the second question is, I would like to ask you if you could describe the title of this book, which is taken away, in a single sentence. Yeah, thank you. As you have already mentioned, that it is not on Venerable Lama Doboom Tulku-Prof himself, but it's just telling us the insight of what he has, of the great legacy he has given to us. So I just wanted to know, how would you describe this word?
I have to answer him very seriously, because he's the one who's coordinated with me and organized this lecture. In one sentence, how would I describe taken away? In one word, I can say life. Life. But in one sentence, I would say the remainder is what counts. Much is taken away from our lives, but what remains is enough for us to live. That is what he said. That was his thrust, I think. And you asked me how did I feel when I started writing the book? Well, I must tell you one thing, that when we started writing the book, we both had a cup of tea before us, and Rinpoche said a prayer, and we began writing. I was excited, but I knew Rinpoche for a long time before that. I had worked with Rinpoche on his different writings, his maxims, two books of maxims. And so I was more fond of him, and so I did not have a chance to have a subjective opinion of what I was getting into. It seemed natural that I should be doing it for him.
Oh, any more questions? Okay. Thank you so much. So in Tibetan, this word, the biography in Tibetan is known as, oftentimes referred to as namtar or as zenam. Zenam in the case of more like His Holiness or Buddha and so forth. And great teachers. Namtar is amazing. Again, is similar, the word used for biography. Usually biographies are the biographies of the enlightened, the great masters. So here finally, I personally would say that from the wonderful presentation made by Professor Sudhamahi with respect to the biography of Lama Doboom Tulku is I think that can be summarized in 3 main points, along with all the full of jokes, fun, to live in the moment rather than think of the worrying about the past, future and so forth, to maintain the positive thinking. I see that there are 3 qualities which Professor Sudhamahi very clearly indicated. One is the integrity. Integrity, finally, the namtar. Namtar, and nam means utter, or say total, and tar is the liberation, utter liberation, meaning that by reading these biographies of the great masters, we read them, and these words should help us to be liberated from our miseries. So that is the basic connotation of what it means, what a biography means in the context of the Tibetan, the vocabularies. So having said this, the best way by which to commemorate a great master, or to remember the great master, or to had it been the case that he is alive today, what would make him most happy over what we're doing, remembering him, commemorating him, observing his last day and so forth. So is to do what was in his mind. And as Professor very clearly indicated, that he had nothing to do to make money for himself, to create name for himself. That is just amazing. And 30 years in Tibet House, he never thought of a legacy for himself. This is just truly a great practitioner, a greatly maintained a very simple life and full of creativity in his mind, and making people around so happy and very positive, to learn things from others. So the one thing he would be very happy is, as indicated by our lecturer today, his quality of the integrity. And I remember that the original biography, what he said, this biography, the moment I heard that it's already out, I asked the office staff, the librarian, to get minimum 10 copies. And the first copy, I quickly browsed through and read it, and I was so impressed to see his very objective thoughts, well reflected in the book, without any sense of restraint. For example, like what he said is that there's the Muslim people, they are very honest. This is what he said in the book. And there's a Muslim guy who's working as a carpenter or as a carpenter, and he's very honest. That's very true. And this is how the observation of the reality around. So objective, I'm so impressed. So one is honesty-related integrity, which Professor very clearly indicated that he made the promise that I should maintain the integrity in my life. And number two is the compassion. In all these detailed activities, detailed the small things which he did, where compassion is never compromised. That's amazing. Taking care of the bird, and the making sure that the bird is taken care of, and from the puppies, the one who is the weakest is being adopted. All these things are amazing qualities that we all have to learn from. Then number three is love for knowledge. Even if you're going to die tomorrow, you have only one day left, but that is something that we have to continue to learn. So it says that the author, who the professor is citing, which Rinpoche cited, Sakya Pandita, who said that even if you are to die tomorrow, you have to engage in learning, because although you're not going to become a scholar today in this life, but for sure it is like, as say, the claiming what you have learned, what you have ask somebody to keep, claiming that later on, likewise in the later life, you can claim it, that this will be the foundation for your growth in the later lives. So with these three qualities, which were so beautifully captured by the Professor Sudhamahi in her talk, I see that Nantar, the utter liberation, if you practice these three qualities within us, then he would be most happy that he lived a life to benefit others, and there are actually people who have benefited even after his having left the world, that through his biography, people have continuously benefited. So this is something that we need to remember. And also that the thought about the impermanence. Impermanence, yes, as some of the people from the audience asked a question about what Rinpoche thought when he left Tibet, coming to India, and then knowing that the Tibet is actually gone and so forth. And so this is impermanence. So the point is that finally each one of us, no matter how elegant, how elaborate the things that you live in, but finally you have to go alone on your own. You have to go when the time for us to leave, we have to leave. That nobody will come with us. So therefore the message from this book, from the talk today, is that finally it's not about, okay, this person passed away, that person died, the neighbor died, and so forth. But the point is that one day I'm also going to die. Impermanence. Once upon a time, India was just like almost like 300 kingdoms. And Tibet once was a very powerful empire, and having influence over Afghanistan, over China, and so forth. And but now, and look at Mongolia. Once Genghis Khan, almost conquering the whole world, and now just Ulaanbaatar, just a handful, like 2 million people in Ulaanbaatar. That's it. This is impermanence. So what the world is going to be like, we never know. After 100 years, 200 years, 500 years, we never know. But no matter what the world is going to be like, the point is that we really need to ponder that somebody who can see what is beyond today. Small children, they only think about playground and teddy bear. And the elders will go beyond this, go beyond think of the teddy bear and think about 5 years later, 100 years, 10 years later, 20 years later. And wise people will think, go beyond, what about whether or not there's a rebirth? If yes, what's my preparation? So for that, these great masters, the books of the autobiographies or the biographies of the great masters, they're extremely helpful for us to mature. They should help us to liberate us from being a very toddler, getting hold of the teddy bear all the time, to somebody who can see after 5 years, 10 years. And then from there to see what is beyond this life and prepare accordingly. So with integrity, knowledge, love for knowledge, and compassion. So that will guarantee that each one of us, wherever you are in your life, here in this life or in the future, forever, the true nature of you are the perfection within each one of us will manifest, and that, say, when you're alone, you'll feel the privacy. When you're with other people, you will not feel lonely. Otherwise, you are alone, you will feel loss of privacy. When you're with other people, when you're alone, you will feel you're lonely. When you're with other people, you feel the loss of privacy. Whereas these great masters, their books, their biographies will help us. Wherever you are in time and space, you can transcend the situation to keep yourself alive, unwaveringly alive with joy, happiness, and purpose for yourself and for the good of the world. So having said this, let us all once more congratulate Professor Sudhamahi ji for this amazing biography which she co-authored with the late Lama Doboom Rinpoche, and let us give her a big round of applause. Thank you so much. And also I'd like to acknowledge that there are a number of the people here who actually the new Rinpoche so well, very closely. For example, like, yes, Professor Sudhamahi, this is the first time I'm meeting you in person. First time? Second time. And we have, in fact, for Tibet House, Chungi Ma'am there. She's extremely being great benefit to Tibet House. They're all for 14 years of service in Tibet House. And really, we all should be feeling grateful to her. And then we have the Georgie here and Maya Joshiji, yes, there, and the Professor English there, and the gentleman over there. So we see that there are a number of the people who are very closely associated with Rinpoche. And yes, very incredible. You are. See, the fact that you're connected with Rinpoche means that your contribution to Tibet House is something always there. So we forever feel grateful to you. And in fact, even one day after leave Tibet House, this reality. It's not that it's the permanent position. We all have to move, keep moving. And the point is that the Tibet House, we should make sure that under the auspices of the Indian government, that it continues to be of service to the humanity, not for promotion of anything else, but for the promotion of the goodness, compassion, wisdom, that people will at least learn how to be a good family member, how to be a compassionate family member in your family, how to look at the faces of your family members with love and affection, and then expand it to your neighbors, to your colleagues at the workplace, and so forth. So this is this much if you can do, if Tibet House can do, that is an incredible great service for India, for the world, and for everyone who is directly or indirectly connected with Tibet House. So in a way, for me, for example, like inviting Professor Sudhamahi ji and the observing convening this tribute to Rinpoche is extremely significant for the reason that he is one of the very rare examples of sacrifice of his life, prime of his life, and teaching us how to lead a happy life, how to lead a purpose of life, no matter how difficult what difficult situation that we go through, we need to know how to be happy. So this is something which we learn, which we can learn greatly from it's like the takeaway of today's talk. Thank you so much. And the book is still there. The book is there. We're extremely grateful to once more Professor Sudhamahi. Thank you so much. And your husband and your daughter. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Keshav Alhamdulillah, for chairing today's evening lecture and for accepting graciously accepting this invitation. And also, I would like to thank our guest lecturer today for today's evening session, Professor Sudhamahi Ragunathan ji, and our family members as well, for your powerful words of appreciation. And last but not the least, I would also like to thank Madam Chunkila for your great contributions to Tibet House. We are really thankful for that. And with this now, I would like to call upon our secretary, Mr. Tunjan Kodibla, to kindly come up on stage and convey his words of appreciation to all of you.
So on behalf of Tibet House, New Delhi, I would like to thank all of you. I would like to thank Professor Sudhamahi for your lecture on the memoirs of His Eminence Doboom Rinpoche, and for your personal reflections that has really enriched this session. And I would like to thank Honorable Keshav Alhamdulillah for chairing this session and for your beautiful conclusion at the end. Venerable Lama Doboom Rinpoche's contributions, not just as the director of Tibet House and the founding managing trustee of World Buddhist Cultural Trust, has left an indelible mark to the world. I hope that I would like to express my gratitude to everyone for your participation and for joining us in today's session. And I hope that we can welcome you in our future events. Actually, I would like to bring to your attention that we have an upcoming conference on the translations of Sanskrit and Pali literature, Theravada and Mahayana Series 4, which will be held on 7th September. So I would really like to welcome you all. And if you wish to receive future announcements of our events, you can subscribe to our newsletter. You can send us an email to programs@tibethouse.in, or you can also visit our website, www.tibethouse.in. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. I wish you all a great evening, and thank you again for joining us. Thank you.